Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, I suppose it can be. Yeah. Namaste. So this is supposed to be a detailed video on ARUDHA LAGNA. Okay, and why I call this as a detailed video is because we'll be looking at all the all the 12 houses from ARUDHA LAGNA, right? So now there is a lot of there is a lot of confusion regarding ARUDHA LAGNA. A lot of people are are doing some blind astrology, so as to say, with regards to with regards to ARUDHA LAGNA and things like that. But it is not meant to be done in that way. Okay, it is not meant to be done in that way. And if you look at a chart from ARUDHA LAGNA, what happens is you can you can actually make a lot of predictions. Okay, a lot of predictions that cannot be made from the Rashi chart, a lot of predictions that cannot be made from the from the Lagna chart, that is. So those things can be judged from the ARUDHA LAGNA. All right, so let's see how we can how we can study, or how we can look at ARUDHA LAGNA in details along with the houses from ARUDHA LAGNA, right? Okay, so ARUDHA LAGNA, it actually represents your your personality, your image, and this is actually I'm speaking not from my own knowledge. Of course, Jyotish cannot be considered anyone's own, but I have been guided very very generously by Sri Freedom Kaal, where I had taken a course with him. And yes, ARUDHA LAGNA, it actually represents your personality image. Okay, so let's be very, very clear. Okay, let's be very, very clear with a few things before we actually go into before we actually go into ARUDHA LAGNA. Okay, so what happens is a sign a sign has a reflection in its ruler planet. Okay, a sign has a reflection that is in its ruler planet. Okay, just a minute, there is some technical difficulty. Okay, so a sign has a reflection in its ruler planet, and the planet, it will act as a mirror, giving the same importance to the corresponding reflection as the original sign. Okay, so for example, just like the light of the moon is a reflection of the sun, so what happens is the ARUDHA, okay, the ARUDHA is a reflection of the Rashi, right? We know that the Rashi chart, of course, comes from the it comes from the sun. So ARUDHA chart comes from the moon. So moon is the it is the karaka, just like sun is the karaka for Lagna. So moon is the karaka for the ARUDHA LAGNA. Okay, so for the ARUDHA LAGNA to be strong, we have to first look at how strong the moon is. Okay, if the moon is very, very strong, what happens is the ARUDHA LAGNA will be will be very, very strong as well. Okay, just like if the sun is afflicted, the Lagna chart also gets afflicted to some extent. Similarly, if the moon is afflicted, then the ARUDHA LAGNA chart will also get afflicted. Okay, so ARUDHA LAGNA is very, very important. It is as important as the Lagna chart. It is as important as the as the Chandra Kundali, which means looking at the chart from the moon. And before understanding what ARUDHA LAGNA is, we have to understand the 3 levels of reality. Okay, the 3 levels of reality. Number 1, the first level, the first level is the level of perception, which is of course the mind. Okay, the second level is the level of reality from our point of view. Okay, and third is what reality actually is. Okay, so there are 2 aspects to reality, right? For example, we don't like a person, or suppose a person is doing something bad to us. That is our judgment for that person, from our perspective. Okay, of course, someone might have done something bad to us. That is obviously real. That is 100% real. Okay, but how the person is, okay, how the person is otherwise, if you take away the fact that he has done bad to us or something bad to us, there is another side to the person which we don't know. Okay, there is another side to the person which maybe his family does not know. So that is, that is the, that is the crux of everything, which is known as the reality. Okay. Now, if you, if you look at this term called reality, what we term as reality can actually be, can actually be termed as our delusion. Okay. Because what happens is our perceptions are very, very limited. Okay, our perceptions are very, very limited, and being limited, they, they rarely, they rarely meet with the reality of the material world. Okay, they rarely meet with the reality of the material world. So what happens is, although our perceptions are limited, right, but what exists in our head is often very, very real, is often very, very real to the extent it is influential in our behavior than the material, than the material world itself, right? The reality that exists in our head, it becomes more important than what is actually going on in the real world, right? For example, suppose you're buying soap. Okay, suppose you're buying soap. What happens is, generally what happens is, we will not buy that soap which will, which will keep our body the cleanest or the most fragrant, but we will end up eventually buying something that, that has the best effect on our mind, through maybe commercial advertising, through maybe, good quality design on the box, or through other such marketing gimmicks, right? We often, we often go to the market and buy things not according to our requirement, or not according to what we need, but according to what has been shown to us through, through all forms of communication mediums, right? Similarly, if you look at the, if you look at your workplace, suppose your boss is about to give a promotion, right? So generally what happens is, the promotion is not given to the most capable person. Okay, the promotion is actually given to the, to the one who the boss thinks is the best, or who wants, who manages to impress the boss the most. So what happens is that that perception, just like the perception we have regarding, regarding the soap example that I gave, or suppose the perception that the boss has regarding us or regarding anyone else, that perception is very, very influential with our interaction of reality, or our interaction with reality rather. Okay, so this is, this is very, very important when we consider a fact that at the end of the day, we are not dealing with ourselves, but we are dealing with others, and we are dealing with the public. Okay, we are not dealing with ourselves, right? We are dealing with others, and we are dealing with the public. So the Arudha Lagna is that which is distinctly visible. Okay, it is that which is distinctly visible, and it is something that catches the mind. Okay, it is something that catches the mind. So what you know about yourself is the Lagna, right? What you know about yourself is the Lagna, but what others think of you is the Arudha Lagna. Getting the point? What you know about yourself, your likes, your dislikes, and whatever, that is the Lagna. But what others think of you, that is the Arudha Lagna. Okay. So if you look at a chart, if you look at a chart from Lagna versus the Arudha Lagna, you will get two different stories. And as astrologers, or as students of astrology, we have to judge the chart from all perspectives. Okay. We have to judge the chart from all perspectives, right? So for example, a person, they may know, they may know that, let's leave that person. Suppose you may know that you are sick. Okay, but unless and until you tell others at your home that you are sick, or maybe you want to visit the doctor, or maybe you want some medicine, or maybe you want to want to go to the hospital, or suppose you start developing certain symptoms, only then others will come to know that you are sick. So, right, most of us, suppose someone has a common cold, or someone has a, has a flu, they can easily go about their daily work, and unless and until someone recognizes their blocked nose or their running nose, or suppose someone recognizes that their voice is cracked. Okay, unless and until that thing is noticed, that crack in the voice or that running nose is noticed, people will not actually know that the person is sick. And this is something that, that we come across in our day-to-day lives, right? So this is the job of the Arudha Lagna. Okay, this is the job of the Arudha Lagna. The Arudha Lagna will tell about the illusion that, others believe to be true. Okay, versus the facts that that are actually true about you. Okay. For example, a person may be very, very wealthy. Okay. A person may be very, very wealthy, but that person may live very shabbily, right? That person may live very shabbily. So what, looking at that shabby appearance, others will believe that the person might be bankrupt, that the person does not have that much of wealth with him. Okay. But what happens is, in reality, it might be completely different. The person may be very, very wealthy. He might be a millionaire and he still might live like a shabby, a shabby old man. So the impression that you are, you are giving off about yourself, that is actually the job of the Arudha Lagna. Okay. Conversely, suppose a person is a thief. Okay, a person is a crooked person. Let's assume that the person is very, very crooked. But this Arudha Lagna Lord is exalted. What will happen is they will be liked by the society and they will rise in popularity. Okay, so the Arudha Lagna is very, very important to understand. Okay, so if you want your image to rise, okay, if you want your image to have a certain stature about itself, you have to work on the Arudha Lagna Lord. All right. Again, taking another example, what happens is that there are certain incredible musicians who are very, very good with their work. But what happens? You see, the people who get recognized, there are people who get fame with, with social media. They come into, they come into recognition. They hound the limelight. They cash in on that popularity. Okay. But if you look at the people who are very, very popular, you will see that they are not very talented. Okay, there is no relationship between popularity and talent. But what happens at the end of the day, the popular ones end up making the most money. So this is a direct impact of the Arudha Lagna. Okay. So we know that, the whole world is Maya. This is Vedanta. We know that the whole world is Maya. The world is created by the mind. Yes, the world is created by the mind. And whatever we see of the world is actually based on our perception. Okay. There is a popular saying in Hindi, a kahavat in Hindi, nazariya badlo, dunya badal jayegi. That means what? That means if you change your perception, the world will change, because at the end of the day, the world is only Maya. Okay. But then, even if it is still Maya, even if it is, even if it is still an illusion, the the translation for Maya is illusion. So even though it is still an illusion, it is, it is very much evidently impacting our manifestation of reality. Okay. So what happens is, don't see the Arudha only as a perception. Okay. Don't see the Arudha only as a perception, because what we see as a perception actually has a very, a very deterministic say in who we are. Okay. In who we are. Suppose we see a person as bad, it becomes very deterministic for us to declare or to, or to believe that the person is bad. Right. So this Arudha will actually show you. Okay. The Arudha will actually show you and how you are perceived. Right. So for example, every house of the horoscope will have an Arudha to it. Okay. The Arudha Lagna is the, is the Arudha of the first house, but every house of the horoscope will have an Arudha. Right. So for example, let us say we are, we are trying to calculate the Arudha, we are trying to calculate the Arudha of the 10th house. Okay. We are trying to calculate the Arudha of the 10th house. Okay. Let's see. Let's take an example of, this is the chart of Bill Gates. Okay, this is the chart of Bill Gates. Let's first calculate the, the Arudha Lagna, and then see how we'll do it. So the calculation of Arudha Lagna, that is, so this is the Lagna. Okay, this is the Lagna. The Lagna is Gemini. The Lagna Lord is Mercury. Count how many houses Mercury has traveled from the Lagna. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Slides are not moving. Okay, just a minute. Okay, I think it is moving now. Okay. So this is the, this is the chart of Bill Gates, just to show you how the Arudha is calculated. The Lagna is Gemini. Okay, the Lagna is Gemini, and the Lagna Lord Mercury is seated in the 4th house. So from the Lagna, it travels 4 houses, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now calculate 4 houses from Mercury. Okay, calculate 4 houses from Mercury. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the Arudha Lagna, 4 houses from Mercury brings us to the 7th house. Now there is a, there is a exception to the calculation of Arudha Lagna. The Arudha of any house cannot be in the same house, and it cannot be in the house exactly opposite to it. So the 7th house is exactly opposite to the 1st house. So if such a situation arises, we will actually calculate the, we will actually count 10 houses from that house. Okay, from the exception house to arrive at the Arudha Lagna. So now count 10 houses from the, from the 7th house. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the 4th house becomes the Arudha Lagna. Okay, the 4th house becomes the Arudha Lagna. And because the 4th house becomes the Arudha Lagna, what happens is this Mercury, okay, it gets exalted. So Bill Gates has a very, has a very expansive image as someone who is very, very wealthy, because the Arudha Lagna Lord itself is, is exalted here. Okay, now let's try to calculate the Arudha of the 10th house for Bill Gates. Okay, so, this one, right? The 10th house is lorded by Jupiter. So let's see how many houses Jupiter travels from the 10th house. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now count 6 houses from this Jupiter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the Arudha Lagna, the Arudha of the 10th house, really sorry, the Arudha for the 10th house of the 10th house, the Arudha Pada, that is, of the 10th house, is the house of Scorpio. Okay, the Arudha Pada of the 10th house for Bill Gates is the house of Scorpio. So in that way, you will calculate, you will calculate the Arudha of every house in the horoscope. You will have 12 houses in the horoscope, so there will be 12 Arudha Padas. Okay, I hope I'm being clear. So what happens is, as I said, the Arudha Lagna, it represents the Lagna and its perception. Okay, it will also tell you how the people see you. Okay, it will also tell you how the people will see you and how they will interact with you based on the, on the perception they have of you. Okay, so it's all about Maya, and Arudha Lagna is the, is the focal point where we, where we project our Maya on other people. Okay, so what happens now? We are coming into 3 very, very important planets. Okay, the Arudha Lagna, as I said, it is like the sun. Yes, the Lagna is like the Karaka for the Lagna is the sun. The Karaka for the Arudha Lagna is the moon. Okay, and there is another one, another important Lagna, which is known as Paka Lagna. Okay, another important Lagna is known as Paka Lagna, right? So this Paka Lagna is like Jupiter. Okay, the Karaka for the Paka Lagna is Jupiter. Okay, what is Paka Lagna? Paka Lagna is the placement of the Lagna Lord. Okay, Paka Lagna is the placement of the Lagna Lord. Let's look at this chart of Bill Gates here again. So you see, for Bill Gates, for Bill Gates, the Lagna Lord is Mercury, and it is placed in the 4th house. So this Virgo becomes the Paka Lagna for Bill Gates. Okay, let's take another example. Suppose this is the chart of Adolf Hitler. Come to these charts. So this Lagna is the rising is Libra. Okay, and Venus, if you see, it has gone to the, it has gone to the 7th house. It is retrograde. So this Aries becomes the Paka Lagna for Hitler. Okay, so this Karaka for Paka Lagna is Jupiter. Okay, this Karaka for Paka Lagna is Jupiter. So these 3 planets, the Karaka for the Lagna, which is the sun, the Karaka for the Arudha Lagna, which is the moon, and the Karaka for the Paka Lagna, which is the Jupiter, these 3 planets are like the eyes of God. Okay, the sun represents the right eye, the moon represents the left eye, and Jupiter, of course, represents the 3rd eye. Okay, and if your sun is afflicted or if your moon is afflicted, you can easily say that one of your eyes would be weak. Suppose the sun is afflicted, you can predict that the right eye is weak. If the moon is afflicted, especially by the nodes, you can predict that the left eye is weak, and so on. Okay. And of course, Jupiter, the third eye, this third eye is always open. Don't ever, ever let people tell you that your third eye needs to be open. It is always open. Okay, it is always open. It's only that we have to cleanse the, cleanse our cleanse our energy centers or the chakras to actually start seeing with the third eye. Otherwise, it is always open. Okay, never let anyone tell you, no matter how qualified that person is, your third eye is closed. No, it is always open. Okay, now it becomes very important. Okay, it becomes very important and as an astrologer, because the astrologer is known as the Devagya. Devagya means the agent of the divine. Okay, he is the representative of Bhagavan for the client. Okay, so it is very important for the astrologer to ensure that these three divine eyes, that means the sun, the moon, and the Jupiter, are always kept purified. And that from there comes the mantra of Hare Ramakrishna. Okay, Hare Ramakrishna. This is the Janak Shadakshari mantra. Okay, it was first, it was first revealed by, King Janak, who is of course the father of Sita in the Ramayana. Okay, this is known as the Janak Shadakshari mantra. It is Hare Ramakrishna. And most of the traditions of, of astrology, for example, the tradition of Achyutananda Dasa, from which the great Sanjay Rath is also coming from, that tradition also has this Janak Shadakshari mantra as the, as the main mantra of the tradition. Okay. So this is the Arudha Lagna. Now I want you to, focus on this diagram. Okay. So make a list, right? Make a list of how to make this, make a mental note of how to make this chart. So the first house always stands for creation, the second house is sustenance, and the third house is destruction. So this is Brahma, this is Vishnu, this is Hara. Okay, because Brahma is the creator, so the first house stands for creation. Because Vishnu is the sustainer, or Narayan is the sustainer, he is the, this is the house of sustenance. We know that the second house from any house is the house of sustenance. And finally, because Shiva is the destroyer, so this is the house of destruction. So make a mental note of this: Brahma, Vishnu Mahesh, again Brahma, Vishnu Mahesh, again Brahma, Vishnu Mahesh, and so on. Okay, so this is, calculate the Arudha Lagnas from your chart. Okay, and then make a mental note of it, and we will go along to all the houses. Okay, so the first house, you see a peculiarity of these things. The Kendras are always creation. Okay, the Kendras are also always creation. Okay, the Trikonas. Okay, one of the Trikona is sustenance, the other Trikona, look at this Arudha Lagna, the ninth house from Arudha Lagna, this is destruction. Okay, so we'll come to the importance of it, but calculate your own Arudha Lagnas and make a note of this of this diagram. All right. Now let's look a bit about these two, these three perceptions of reality. Okay, so we have to first, before going into creation, we have to first look at the sustenance factor of it. Okay, and who is the sustainer? The sustainer is Vishnu, of course, and Vishnu sustains us through the three sattvic planets. What are the three sattvic planets? Jupiter, Sun, and Moon. Okay, so out of the 9 planets, these are the 3 sattvic planets. We'll not consider the 9 planets, we'll consider 7 planets only, not Rahu and Ketu, because they don't have a body. So Vishnu will always sustain through these sattvic planets, which is Jupiter, which is Sun, and which is Moon. So what is Jupiter? Jupiter is the Karaka for Akash Tattva. Okay, Jupiter represents Akash Tattva, and it is the sustainer for both the living world and the non-living world. Okay, and because it is Akash Tattva, so it permeates everything, and everything exists within this Akash Tattva. Okay, it is, Jupiter is the god in your chart. Okay, Jupiter is the god in your chart, and it is like Narayan. Okay, it is in everything, it is in everywhere, everything is contained in it, it is always supporting. Okay, it is always supporting, and it is the grace of, it is the grace of Jupiter that can overcome the wrath of Yama or death. Okay, suppose you are running through the 8th lord Dasha. Okay, you are running through the Dasha of the 8th lord, and Jupiter is actually aspecting the Lagna Lord. So no matter how badly how how malefic your 8th Lord is, that aspect of Jupiter on the Lagna will always ensure, or the Lagna Lord will always ensure, that somehow divine grace will sustain you. Okay, so it is Jupiter, right? It is Jupiter that can prevent a bad dasha from killing you. It is the aspect of Jupiter that helps you to cross the to cross the impact of the nodes. Okay, it is very very it is very very good if the Jupiter, if Jupiter is aspecting one of the nodes, at least one of the nodes. Okay, it is not considered to be good if Jupiter is with the nodes, but if Jupiter is aspecting one of the nodes, it is very very good, because you will actually overcome the maya of the node that is being that is being aspected by Jupiter. Okay, then just a minute, friends, there is a slight technical difficulty. Are iba dapat pa po tolot Jan tolot dapat pa po tu. Okay, really sorry about that. All right. So as I said, the aspect of Jupiter, the aspect of Jupiter is very, very, it is very, very auspicious if it falls on one of the nodes. Okay, and it is Jupiter that helps to individual soul to sustain. Okay, so this is the reason, this is the reason Jupiter is regarded as the highest benefic. Right. Then what happens? The sun is another sattva graha, and it represents the resources that are there. Okay, it represents the resources that are available, which it gives through the signs. Okay, so all the 12 houses of the horoscope will have 12 suns. That is the reason the 12 Adityas, they are together known as the Dasha Aditya, Dwadasha Aditya. Okay, so the sun, the Adityas of all the Rashis, they give fruits in this world. Okay, and they represent the environment that are either bountiful or barren. Okay, that is the reason why, if you are trying to remove poverty, okay, if you are trying to remove poverty, what happens is you have to work with the sun. Okay, you have to work with the sun, and the ability to have children must be seen from the Arudha of the 5th house. Okay, sorry, the Arudha pada of the 5th house from the sun. I'll not go deep into these things, right? And the sun is the igniter of the Raja Yoga. Okay, because for a Raja Yoga to start, the resources must be available. Okay, the resources must be available, and all resources are actually provided by the sun. Then the moon is the nurturing mother who is who is needing the resources. Okay, and the ability of the availability of the resources can actually be seen from the Hora chart. Okay, Jupiter shows the use of those resources, and if you want to study the Hora chart, there is a video on unlocking the Hora chart where my good friend Rajatji has actually shown how the Hora chart must be studied. Okay, so the moon horas they show the need for resources, and the sun horas, they show the availability. Okay, and Jupiter, it will show the intelligence that that is there in you to make the use of those available resources. Okay, so the sattva guna of the moon is the nurturing and caring that is needed to sustain. Okay, so this is about the this is about the sustaining part of Vishnu. Okay, then we come to the creation aspect of Brahma. So Brahma will create only through the Rajasic planets of Venus and Mercury. Okay, so Venus is the base of all creation because it represents Jala Tattva. Okay, Venus, the word Venus, the Sanskrit word for Venus is Shukra. Shukra is also another word for semen. Okay, and semen, we know it is the base of all creation. And the seventh house from Venus, must be examined to know about your first partner. Okay, the seventh house from Venus will tell you a lot of details as to how the spouse will come from, or where the spouse will come from. Okay, then of course there is Mercury. So Mercury is the creator of the non-living world, right? Mercury is the creator of the non-living world, and Mercury represents Prithvi Tattva, right? So the seventh lord from Mercury will show the partner you need for creating non-living things, the business, right? If you want to show, or if you want to know, how your business partner will be, then you will examine the seventh lord from Mercury. Okay, if you want to know what business you should do, then you must examine the seventh lord from Mercury. It will give you a very good idea. Okay, so what happens is, if your Mercury and Venus are in are in kendras to the Arudha Lagna, okay, are in kendras from the Arudha Lagna, then it will show that the person can actually enjoy the creation and can also enjoy the creation, created things. Okay, the person would be a very good creator. That is the reason most of the musicians, or most of the painters and artists and people like that, they would actually have, they will actually have Venus and Mercury in in Kendra from Arudha Lagna, because those are the real creators. And if you want to see the creative ability of a person, please look at the chart of a person, and you will see that if the person is very, very creative, you will see that Venus or Mercury or both of them would be actually in a Kendra from Arudha Lagna. Okay, so what happens is, these Rajasic planets, they consume a lot of Agni Tattva, right, to be able to create. That is the reason what happens is, if the sun is weak, Venus and Mercury cannot create. Okay, so the power of Venus and Mercury is actually related to the sun. The sun will direct Venus and Mercury to create resources for you. Okay, the sun will direct Venus and Mercury to create resources for you. So if the sun is weak, or if the sun is debilitated, or if the sun is is say in a watery sign, then it becomes very, very difficult for Venus and Mercury to create. Okay, so again, from the Arudha Lagna, if you have to see a sannyasi, that is, okay, if you have to see a sannyasi, then the position of Venus and Mercury will reveal a lot about it. Okay, we'll come to the chart examples. Okay, because a true sannyasi is one who has renunciated Mercury, which is of course business, which is of course cash, and also Venus, which is of course procreation. Okay, if you look at the life of Sri Thakur, Ramakrishna Thakur, or Ramakrishna Paramhansa, he was someone who was always averse to money. Okay, it is said that one day Vivekananda, he put a bag of notes under Ramakrishna's bed, when Thakur was sleeping, and immediately Thakur got up and he ran away from there. Okay, because he was so averse to this to this energy of Mercury, which is cash, which is liquid cash, which is business. So if you actually have to see a true sannyasi, the person must be able to renounce Mercury, the person must be able to renounce Venus. It is very, very important. Okay, and the sannyasis that you see on TV, on films, on social media, well, you can question whether they are true sannyasis or not, because they have not renunciated these things. Okay, now we'll come to the destructive aspect of of Shiva. Okay, so Shiva, he destroys through the tamasic planets of Mars and Saturn. Okay, so Mars of course is Agni. Okay, Mars of course is Agni. It just breaks things down. Okay, it breaks things down, but transformation, things don't go anywhere. They just get transformed to something new. Okay, they just change because everything is changing shape and form, right? You keep a you keep a bowl of water in the freezer, it'll actually change the shape to ice. Okay, so Mars is entrusted with the responsibility of destroying the non-living world. Okay. For example, a chair, this chair which I'm sitting on is useful as long as it works. But if one of the legs breaks down, what happens? It needs to be either repaired or it needs to be thrown away so that it can be transformed into something else. Okay. So Saturn, of course, we know it is connected to Yama. Okay, it is connected to Yama. Those who have done the master class on Saturn will actually come to know why Saturn is connected to Yama. Okay, so Saturn is that tamas. Saturn represents vata, right? Saturn represents vata. So this vata, it actually starts, it is responsible for deteriorating the cells. Okay, it is responsible for deteriorating the cells. Shubhro sir is here, so you know how air is responsible for for deterioration of the body, which is of course commonly known as aging. Okay, so because Saturn rules aging, so he destroys the living world. Just like Mars destroys the non-living world, Saturn is responsible for destroying the living world. Okay, so Saturn is the karaka for sannyas. Saturn is the one who makes us renounce. Okay, and what is he renouncing? What is the sannyasi renouncing? As I said just now, the sannyasi has to renounce Mercury and Venus. Okay, so that is the reason Saturn placed with Mercury or Saturn placed with Venus can bring certain difficult combinations. Okay, because these rajasic planets, when placed with the karaka for sannyas, it becomes a very difficult combination to handle. Okay, now while choosing muhurta, I'm just coming to the Panchanga part of it. While choosing muhurta, one must be very, very careful about the placement of Mars and Saturn. If you are, say, if you are choosing muhurta for a non-living thing, for example, inauguration of something, you must be careful of Mars. Okay. Suppose you are choosing the muhurta of marriage, you must be careful of Saturn. Right. So this third house from ARUDHA Lagna is very, very important. I'll come to it. And because Mars and Saturn are tamasic planets of destruction, so if there is any aspect of Saturn or Mars in the third house from ARUDHA Lagna, or if Saturn or Mars are present in the third house from ARUDHA Lagna, it can show a lot. It can show a very violent death, especially Mars. Okay, if Mars is present in the third house from ARUDHA Lagna or aspect in the third house from ARUDHA Lagna, it can show a very violent death. Similarly, Saturn, if present in the third house from ARUDHA Lagna, or is in the it is in the third house from ARUDHA Lagna or aspect in the third house from ARUDHA Lagna, it can show disease at the time of death. Okay, so because Mars and Saturn, they are the significators of death and destruction. They are best in the Upachaya houses. Okay, they are best in the Upachaya houses, and they behave very, very badly if they are in Kendras. But there is an exception to this rule. If Saturn and Mars are in Kendras, they better be debilitated, because if they are debilitated, they will give you a lot of wealth. Okay, they will give you a lot of wealth. So what happens? What happens is this Saturn. Okay, this Saturn and Mars, they represent a cleansing process. They represent a destroying process. Okay, and disease is a part of this destruction process. And if something new gets created without the proper destruction of the old, it is known as cancer. Yes, that is the reason, why a lot of spiritual people get cancer. You see the life of Ramana Maharishi, you see the life of Ramakrishna Paramahansa, they all got cancer because they were still in the body while trying to reach to God. And when you connect with God, you become someone new. Okay, you become someone new when you try to connect with the divine, with the Paramatma. You become someone new. And if you try to connect to the Paramatma without the destruction of this living body, it starts developing cancer to destroy itself. Okay, people will say that Ramana Maharishi or Ramakrishna Paramahansa or Srila Prabhupada, they got cancer because they were taking the karma of others, but it is actually not true. Okay, if you take the karma of others, it's also a very secretive process of of cleansing yourself every day so that the karma does not impact you every day. Okay, but they got cancer because they are trying to connect to the Paramatma. And when you connect to the Paramatma, you are actually recreating yourself. You are actually defying your destiny. Whatever God wanted to happen for you, you are defying that. And because you have tried to connect, or you have found a way to connect to the Paramatma without properly destroying this mortal body, it causes cancer. Okay, so that is how you will look at the creation and the destruction process. Okay, So as I said, the houses from Arudha Lagna, they have their gunas. Okay, they have their gunas. Creation is rajas, sustenance is sattva, and destruction is tamas. So you also can look at the, you can look at the houses in terms of their gunas. Okay. Any doubt till here? We have not even started the houses. We'll go to the houses now. Okay, let's look at the houses from out of the Lagna. I hope all of you know your chart and know how the where the Arudha Lagna is. So this first house of the Arudha Lagna is the Arudha Lagna itself. We will call it as AL. Okay, the second house we will call it as AL2. The third house we will call it as AL3. And similarly, until the 12th house from Arudha Lagna, we will call it as AL12. Okay, so the first house, it is the Arudha Lagna. It is Rajas. Okay, it is Rajas. And we know that the natural, the natural karaka of the first house is sun. So it is very, very good for creating. Okay, it is very, very good for creating. And the Lord of the Arudha Lagna, the position of the Lord of the Arudha Lagna will tell you how eager you are to make things happen, to get things in this world. Okay, to improve your image. Suppose someone has a very, someone has a very exalted exalted Lord of the Arudha Lagna. What will happen is that the person would be eager for fame. Okay, the person would be eager for fame, and because the person would be eager for fame comes with status, right? You must have a very high status if you want to get famous, right? So if the Arudha Lagna Lord is exalted, okay, if the Arudha Lagna Lord is exalted, then if it is a benefic, it is very, very good. But if it is a malefic, okay, it will bring certain high status problems as well. Okay, for example, suppose your Arudha Lagna is Capricorn and the Saturn is placed in Libra. Okay, so what happens is Saturn, it will give you fame. Of course, it will give you fame because the Lord is exalted, but it will bring certain problems. Maybe people will have a perception that what is Saturn now? Saturn, the negative qualities of Saturn are cheating. The negative qualities of Saturn are are womanizing. The negative qualities of Saturn are depressive. Yes, are depression and things like that. So maybe people will start thinking that you have cheated your way to get the status that you are in. Okay, so the status of the Lord of the Arudha Lagna will actually impact what image you are creating in this world and how the world is treating you. Okay, and the planets that are joining the Lord of the Arudha Lagna, okay, or the Arudha Lagna itself, they will have a tremendous influence on the person's image. Okay, they will have a tremendous influence on the person's image. For example, just like Jupiter and Moon, they are considered to be very, very good in the first house. So similarly, they are also very, very good if they are either with the Lord of the Arudha Lagna or with they are in the Arudha Lagna itself, because that gives a very charming personality. Okay, you see, some people they remain famous very, very, they remain very, very famous even after their death. So if you look at the charts of people who are famous even after their death, you will often see that Jupiter or Moon, or both Jupiter and Moon, they are either together with the Lord of the Arudha Lagna or they are in the first house of Arudha Lagna. Okay, that means in the Arudha Lagna itself, right? So you must also be aware of planets and other Arudhas that fall in the Arudha Lagna. For example, suppose you have the Arudha Lagna as Libra and the Arudha Pada of the sixth house is also in Libra. Okay, then what happens? The Arudha Pada of the sixth house will actually show the rise of enemies. Okay, and because this Arudha Pada of the sixth house is falling in the Arudha Lagna, what happens is when the image rises, the enemies will also rise, diseases will also rise. So you have to be very, very careful with how how the Arudha Lagna is, or where the Arudha Lagna is conjuncting with. Okay, second house from Arudha Lagna, this is the Narayan Sthan, the house of sustenance. Okay, it is the Narayan Sthan. So we'll just call it as AL2. Okay, so we know that the Karaka of the second house is Jupiter. Natural Karaka of the second house is Jupiter. So this house, the second house from Arudha Lagna, also has the sustenance of Jupiter, which is a very powerful supporting force. Okay, So because the second house is the house of sustenance, so the sattvic planets or the rajasic planets which are not afflicted, if they are present here, it can, it can give very good sustenance. And if there are malefics in the second house from Arudha, they can pull down your image. Okay, they can pull down your image. For example, if Saturn is in the second house from the Arudha Lagna, it will show a person whose reputation is damaged by lying or cheating. Okay. Or suppose Mars and Venus are conjunct in the second house from Arudha Lagna. Mars is the tamasic planet, Venus is the rajasic planet. What happens is, because Mars is tamas. Okay, because Mars is tamas, the person may have their reputation tarnished by sexual scandal, maybe at the workplace or maybe at home. Okay, so this AL2 or the second from the Arudha Lagna will sustain the Arudha. Okay, and benefics, as I said, will give the Arudha Lagna good nourishment to rise, and malefics will pull down the image. Okay, so there are certain predictive principles that we will look at, because AL2 is very, very important. It is the sustainer of the Lagna. Okay, so if Mercury, Jupiter, or Venus are exalted in the second from Arudha Lagna, the native will be very, very rich. Okay, make a note of this. If Venus, Mercury, or Jupiter are exalted, okay, or placed in own houses in the AL2, the second from Arudha Lagna, the native will be rich. Okay, if Venus, the combination, because Arudha Lagna is also your speech, right? Because the second house, the second house is also your speech. So presence of Venus or presence of a strong unafflicted Venus in the second house from Arudha Lagna can make one a poet. Okay, because Venus is the poet among the planets. He is Shukracharya, right? He is Shukracharya. So the presence of Venus in the second house from AL2 can make a person as a poet or a public speaker as well. Okay. Now let's look at a few examples here. Okay, so this is the chart of Bill Gates. Okay, this is the chart of Bill Gates. So looking at the chart, what happens? Look at the Lagna Lord and the Arudha Lagna Lord. The Lagna Lord is Mercury. The Arudha Lagna Lord is also Mercury, and both of them are exalted. Okay. Now look at the second house from Arudha Lagna. It has Venus in its own sign, and an exalted Saturn, which is giving Nicha Bhanga to the debilitated Sun. So what is happening? Even though the Sun is debilitated, but because it is getting Nicha Bhanga from Saturn, it is a very strong AL2. Okay, it is a very strong AL2, and that is the reason his image has been sustaining since very, very long. Okay, a lot of people have tried to tarnish his image, especially during the pandemic. They said that he was responsible for creating the virus. When Bill Gates went into the business of producing vaccines, a lot of allegations were made which said that Bill Gates is actually responsible for spreading the virus. Okay, and because he has he has Venus in its own sign, so what happens? He is a very, very good speaker. Anyone who has heard Bill Gates speak will vouch for that. Okay, he is a very good speaker. And because Saturn is exalted, okay, and because Saturn is exalted, so he became famous as a common man. So Saturn represents the Aam Aadmi, right? Saturn represents the public. That is the reason Saturn is known as the kingmaker. Although the Sun is the king, it is Saturn who makes someone as a king. So Saturn is the kingmaker. So because he has an exalted Saturn, so he rose to this powerful position of being the most richest man on the planet as a common man. Okay. All right. Okay, Adolf Hitler. So look at Adolf Hitler. He has an exalted Sun lording his second from Arudha Lagna. Okay, and if he was not defeated, he would have actually become a king of Europe. Okay, he would have actually become a king of Europe. Okay, so it was unfortunate that he got defeated, or maybe it was fortunate for us that he got defeated, but otherwise he would have created a lot of trouble here. Okay. Now look at the chart of the chart of the chart of Adolf Hitler again. So his exalted Sun, as I said, is lording the second from Arudha Lagna. But look at the Arudha Lagna. It is aspected by the own lord as well. Okay. The Arudha Lagna is is you know is the moon. The moon, the Cancer is the, Cancer is the Arudha Lagna. The Lord is moon, and the moon is aspecting the Arudha Lagna by Graha Drishti, by Rashi Drishti. Okay, and look at, Jupiter. Look at Jupiter. It is MKS. Jupiter is MKS. Okay, so although Jupiter is MKS, it is still giving Graha Drishti to the Arudha Lagna. Okay, so because Jupiter is MKS, because it's in a very, it's in a very deplorable state. MKS means a very bad state, a very uncomfortable position. So his image was that of a tyrant who, who terrorized the entire humanity. Okay, this is how you look at it. So Gemini gives certain other results for the second from Arudha Lagna. Okay, for example, if you have someone, this is again, this Shubhroshar can actually use this for as a reference point here. So if someone has a, if some person has hair which is graying prematurely, then look for Ketu in the second house from Arudha Lagna. Okay, look for Ketu in the second house from Arudha Lagna. Why? Because the Mahavidya who is connected to Ketu is Tumavati. We know that Tumavati is a widow, is a goddess with the gray hair. Okay, so if Ketu is present in the second house from Arudha Lagna, it can give prematurely graying hair. Just look at it. Okay. So similarly, Mercury, if Mercury is afflicted in the second house from AL, this is again from Gemini. Okay, if Mercury is present in AL2 but is afflicted, it can give a lot of it can give a lot of weight problems. Okay, it can give a lot of weight problems. Just look at it. Okay, just look at it, how it works. Just a minute. Okay, then the third house from Arudha Lagna. Okay, so creation, this is the Harasthana. Okay, this is the Harasthana. It is a tamasic house, and the Karaka is Mars. Okay, so this is a very difficult placement, and it will show the circumstances of death. Okay, the third house from Arudha Lagna will show the circumstances of death. But if benefics are placed in this house, the person will have a tendency of renouncing them. Okay, if benefics are placed in the third house from Arudha Lagna, their significations will be broken out of this life. Okay, it is very, very good if you have tamasic planets in the third house from Arudha Lagna. It is very, very good. Okay, but it gives you very harsh behavior. If you have Saturn, or if you have Saturn or Mars, in the third house from Arudha Lagna, it will give you extremely harsh speech. Okay, so someone who has a Saturn or Mars in the third house from Arudha Lagna, they can actually go for employment. They can actually join the army. Okay, most of the generals who have made a mark in the army, they will have either Saturn or Mars in the third house from Arudha Lagna. Okay, just look at it, right? Even in the even in the sixth house from Arudha Lagna, if Saturn and Mars are present, there would be people become very, very good at military service. Okay, why? Because the third house is the house of Parakrama. Okay, the third house is the house of Parakrama. Parakrama means your your bravery, your own effort. Okay, so if malefics are present in the third house of our Lagna, they will make a person very, very jujaru. It is known as jujaru, right? They can make a person very, very strong and fighting. And if benefics are there, it will make them very, very passive. That means they will not want to fight. You have heard that philosophy. If someone slaps you on one cheek, offer your other cheek. Maybe look at the chart of Mahatma Gandhi and see why he was so very, so very passive. Okay. So what happens is, if an exalted benefic is present in the third house from Arudha Lagna, it can make a person very spiritual, because that the quality, as I said, if a benefic is present in the third house from Arudha Lagna, the person can renounce that quality, okay, of that benefic planet. So for example, if the sun is present in the third house from Arudha Lagna and it is exalted, the person will have no attachment towards resources. Paisa lena hai, le jao, I don't need anything. It's just me and myself. I just want to go to a cave and meditate and things like that. Okay, so as I said, the third house of Arudha Lagna, it will also show you the number of younger siblings you have. Okay, this is the this is the predictive principle I'm giving you out. Your younger siblings are not seen from the third house from Lagna. Your younger siblings are seen from the third house of Arudha Lagna. Okay. Number of planets in the third house of Arudha Lagna will give you the number of younger siblings. Okay. Now, the third house also shows you the circumstances of death. Okay. The third house from Arudha Lagna will also show you the circumstances of death. For example, you know, the sign of the third house from Arudha Lagna will show you the place of death, and the planets which are conjoining or aspecting the third house from Arudha Lagna will indicate the cause of death. Okay, that means this AL3 will tell you the nature of that death. Okay, where you are and what it takes to take you out of this body. Right. So if there are malefics, if there are malefics in the AL3, or if there are malefics aspecting the AL3, it actually indicates a very painful or horrible death. Okay. If there are benefics, on the contrary, the death can be very, very painless. It can be very, very easy. Okay. So if you look at the, if you look at the various planets that are in the third house from Arudha Lagna, if suppose sun is present in the third house from Arudha Lagna, it can cause death due to, due to the government. Okay. For example, the government may conspire to kill you. Okay. Because it is the sun, so it can also show death by firearms. Right. If the moon is aspecting the third house from Arudha Lagna, or the moon is present in the AL3, it shows death from tuberculosis or other forms of kapha disorders. For example, the person might die of a chest pain. Okay. Mars will again indicate death from weapons, from sharp weapons, maybe, or from, from firearms, from wounds, from burns, etc. Okay. Saturn will show indigestion, other vata diseases. It can show snake bite also. It can show being poisoned as well. Okay. If K2 is present in the AL3, it can show death due to contagious diseases, or maybe due to smallpox. Suppose someone is about to die and all of a sudden the person has smallpox and he dies. Okay. If Saturn is present with Mandi, suppose, Mandi is very, very important to looking at the nature of AL3. If Saturn is present with Mandi, okay, it can actually show death due to drowning. Okay, it can actually show death due to drowning. Suppose Moon is present there. Okay, as I said, Moon can cause death due to tuberculosis. Moon can cause death due to chest complaints. Now, suppose Moon is joining Mandi in the third house from Arudha Lagna, it can actually indicate death by choking or food poisoning. Okay. Similarly, Jupiter can indicate death by vomiting or the inability to eat. For example, you've seen some people who give up eating. For example, Savarkar, he gave up eating 1 week prior to dying. So he was, he was least interested to eat. So that is the job of Jupiter. Okay. Suppose someone got a very bad choke and he tried to vomit and he got killed in the process. That is also Jupiter in the third house, or Jupiter aspecting the third house from AL3. Okay. Venus can show urinary problems. It can show kidney problems. It can show death due to diabetes as well. Okay. And if many planets are there, it can show mixed results. All right. Rahu can show death in a foreign land. Okay. Rahu can show death in a foreign land, or Rahu can show death due to foreign forces. For example, some Indian in Ukraine got killed recently in the war. What happened was he must be having Rahu in the third house from Arudha Lagna. Okay. Similarly, if Jupiter or Venus are exalted, or if Jupiter and Venus are strong in the third house from Arudha Lagna, it actually indicates previous awareness regarding the period of death. There are some people who can actually tell you that, okay, I'll be dying during this period. Okay. It is known as Jnana Purvakam in Sanskrit. Right. It is known as Jnana Purvakam. So if Jupiter or Venus are strongly placed in the third house from Arudha Lagna, these people can actually predict their own death. Okay. Similarly, if Saturn or Mars are strongly placed in the third house from AL, you will never know when your death will come. For example, as I said, Saturn or Mars, they can make a person join the army. So when you are in the army, you don't know when death comes. You might be shot in the head from behind, or you may be in a war and you might think that you have killed your enemies, and all of a sudden someone comes to you and shoots you from the front. Okay, so this is the this is the magic of the third house from Arutha Lagna. Fourth house from Arutha Lagna, this is again a creating house. Okay, having the natural karaka of the moon. Okay, so the AL4 shows what you do for the image of the family or for your community. Okay, what you do for the image of the family or the community. The fourth house from Arutha Lagna will show that. Right? So, if Venus and Moon or both or one of them are present in the fourth house from Arutha Lagna, it can actually give a lot of luxuries to the to the person. Okay. Similarly, we know that Venus gets Digbala in the fourth house. Okay, Moon gets Digbala in the fourth house. So that is the reason these planets give an abundance of luxuries if placed in the fourth house from Arutha Lagna. Okay. Now, what happens is, if a planet is in Digbala, okay, if the planet is in Digbala in the fourth house from Arutha Lagna, it can make you travel in its direction during its dasha. For example, suppose Venus is present, as I said, suppose Venus is present in the fourth house from Arutha Lagna. What happens? During its dasha, you might travel southeast from your location. Okay. It may travel southeast from you will travel southeast from your location. For example, suppose we are all in India and we suppose an Indian has Venus in the fourth from Arutha Lagna, right? And the person is running Venus Dasha. So he might want to go to America. But because Venus is getting Digbala, he can instead reach to Malaysia, because that is that is where the southeast that is where the southeast direction is. Okay, so that is how you look at the fourth from Arutha Lagna. Fifth from Arutha Lagna, it is again a sustaining house. It is a Vishnu Sthan. Okay, it is a Vishnu Sthan, and it shows the achievements and recognition that one gets from their learning and skills. Okay, so this fifth house from Arutha Lagna is very, very important. Someone may be very, very very, very experienced, someone may be very, very learned, but that recognition is actually seen from the nature of the fifth lord from Arutha Lagna, the fifth house from Arutha Lagna. Okay, someone may be very, very intelligent, but that person might not get even 1% appreciation for his intelligence. Okay, someone may be very, very learned. Okay, someone may be very, very learned, but that person may not get even 1% of appreciation from their learning. All right, just a minute. Okay. Suppose someone is very, very suppose someone is a musician. Okay, he's very, very talented, right? But the fifth house from Arutha Lagna is afflicted, then that person will never be recognized for his or her talent. Okay, so this is the importance of the fifth house. Okay, so now if you want to look at government jobs, okay, people ask what are the combinations for government job. Then what happens is, if Venus or Jupiter or Moon or all of them are present in the fifth house from Arutha Lagna or from the seventh house of Paka Arudha. Okay, Paka Arudha. What is Paka Arudha? Paka Arudha is the Arudha Pada of your Paka Lagna. Okay, Paka Arudha is the Arudha Pada of your Paka Lagna. So if Jupiter, Venus or Moon or all of these planets are present in the fifth house from Arudha Lagna, the person can get a government job. Okay, the person can get a government job, right? Similarly, for leaders, okay, for leaders or for someone who is good in leadership, these planets are very, very important. Jupiter, Venus or Moon, if they're present in the fifth from Arutha Lagna, the person can rise to a prominent position in politics. Okay, it can give a it can give a very prominent position in politics. And surprisingly, if you have to look at a politician with a very good heart, okay, if a person is a good people and politicians, they are very, very rare. If a person is a politician, 99% is, you can be you can assume that the person is a crook. But if you have to look at a very nice politician, which is someone who has a very nice heart, then what happens? You have to look at Venus or Jupiter or Moon in the 5th house from ARUDHA Lagna. Okay, this is very, very important. Right? So the influences, just to differentiate on the 5th house from Lagna, we know that the 5th house is the house of Purva Punya. So just to differentiate between the 5th house from the Lagna and the 5th house from the ARUDHA Lagna. Okay, I'll just use a quotation that was given by Narasimha Rao ji on one of his Facebook posts. He had said that the influences on the 5th from Lagna will show if a person is capable or intelligent. Okay. And the influences on the 5th house from ARUDHA Lagna will show if the person is perceived to be intelligent by the world. Okay. If there are benefic influences in the 5th house from Lagna, the person will be very intelligent. If there are benefic influences in the 5th house from ARUDHA Lagna, the world will think that the person is intelligent. This is very, very important to understand. This is an important distinction to make. That is. Okay. So now you also look at the ARUDHA Pada of the 5th house. Okay. You have to look at the ARUDHA Pada of the 5th house as well. As I said, all the 12 houses will have their own ARUDHA Padas. So if there are benefic influences on the ARUDHA Pada of the 5th house, the person would get a lot of awards. The person would get a lot of prizes and special recognitions, etc. Okay. So suppose you come across someone in the office who is getting promoted and you think that what has that person done? Why is he getting promoted so very often? Look at the benefic influences in the ARUDHA Pada from the 5th house. Not the not the 5th house from ARUDHA Lord, from ARUDHA Lagna, but the ARUDHA Pada of the 5th house. Okay. So these are the distinctions that you need to make. Now let's look at a few examples here. All right. Albert Einstein. So we know who he was. Okay. So he has a Dhimanta yoga. Okay, he has a Dhimanta yoga as the 1st, 3rd, 4th, and 5th lord are conjunct. Okay, the 6th lord is exalted. So Mercury is getting a nature bhanga. So it shows that he was intelligent. Okay. Now look at the 5th house from ARUDHA Lagna. The 5th house from ARUDHA Lagna has an exalted Mars and Rahu as well. Okay, the ARUDHA Lagna is Virgo, right? The 5th house from ARUDHA Lagna is Capricorn. It is having an exalted Mars and Rahu. It means that people were in awe of his intelligence. Okay, so if the 5th from the ARUDHA Lagna is weak, if the 5th house from ARUDHA Lagna is weak, people think that a person is not intelligent. But if the 5th lord from ARUDHA Lagna is exalted, your intelligence will be praised. Okay, now look at the ARUDHA Pada of the 5th house. Okay, the ARUDHA Pada of the 5th house again is in the same sign as the AL5. Okay, right? The lord of the A5. The lord of the A5 is the sun. Okay, the lord of the A5 is the sun. Look at the ARUDHA Pada of the 5th house. It is Leo. Okay, it is Leo, and it is it is getting a direct aspect from Jupiter. Okay, the lord of the ARUDHA Pada of the 5th house is Leo, which is getting a direct aspect from Jupiter, and Jupiter is strongly placed in the 9th house. Right? So what is happening? It is actually showing recognition for his creative intelligence, and this recognition is still continuing after his death. Okay, so this is the power of the of the 5th house from ARUDHA Lagna. Okay, so 6th house, we have covered half the house. We'll cover half the houses now, right? So 6th house is the house of destruction. It is a very dangerous house. Okay, it's a very dangerous place to be in. Actually, it is this 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna is more dangerous in my opinion than the 6th house from Lagna or the 6th house from Moon. Rajasic planets will lose their ability to create, and the Sattvic planets become very, very weak here. Okay, the Rajasic planets will lose their ability to create, and the Sattvic planets become extremely weak. Tamasic planets also become weak. Okay, and if Tamasic planets go into the 6th house from the ARUDHA Lagna, the person would be a fighter. Okay, the person would be a fighter. And if if tamasic planets like Mars or Saturn are in the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna, the person's voice would be really, really harsh. They would be, they would be perceived as being very, very aggressive. Okay. Now, if there are benefics in the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna, the native can be troubled a lot by enemies. Okay. The native can be troubled a lot by enemies. For example, let's look at Hitler's chart. Let's look at Hitler's chart. This is Hitler's chart, right? So if you look at Hitler's chart, Hitler had Jupiter. Jupiter is the 6th lord from Lagna. It is also the 6th lord from ARUDHA Lagna. Okay, but look at this 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna. It has 3 benefic planets, isn't it? It has 3 benefic planets. So he tried to take on some very big adversaries, some very big enemies, but at the end of the day, they ended being too big for him. Okay, they ended up being too big for him. Okay, so this is very, very important to understand. The 6th lord benefics placed in the 6th from ARUDHA Lagna can give a lot of trouble from enemies. Okay, malefic in the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna, it gives good results in the material world, but it is bad for spirituality. Okay, malefics in the 6th from ARUDHA Lagna, they are good for material prosperity. Okay, similarly, if you have to see, okay, I'm giving out another secret. If you have to see whether a person is accepting black money, okay, whether a person is accepting money from under the table, then there would certainly be malefics in the 6th from ARUDHA Lagna. Okay, just see if a person is taking if you want to see a person, suppose a person has grown very, very rich in a short period of time, and you want to see has he grown rich by legal means or illegal means, and there are malefics in the 6th from ARUDHA Lagna, you will find that the person will have certain underhand deals. Okay, the person will be fond of accepting money from under the table. All right, now as I had said, 6th Rajasic planets are very, very bad in the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna because they lose their ability to create. Okay, they lose their ability to create. And I also had said that if you have to understand, or if you have to see a real sannyasi, you'll have to look at the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna. It will almost always contain Mercury and Venus. Mercury is money, Venus is the opposite gender. Okay, so if you look at the charts here, Ramanna Maharishi. Okay, Ramanna Maharishi. So look at Ramanna Maharishi's chart. It has Mercury and Venus in the 12th from ARUDHA Lagna, but this Mercury and Venus, they are directly aspecting the 6th house. Okay, they are directly aspecting the 6th house, right? So what happened? Because they were not exactly present in the 6th house, was only aspecting the 6th house, right? He did not force his followers. Bhagwan Ramanna Maharishi did not force his followers to take up sannyas, right? He always let them follow their own path. Okay, and if you look at Ramanna Maharishi's life, he never called himself a sannyasi. Okay, he never called himself a sannyasi. He was just he just received enlightenment at the young age of 16, and he just wandered around. Okay, he just wandered around, and then he entered into some deep states of samadhi. So it was not a direct, Ramana Maharishi never took some direct formal vows of sannyas, but because Venus and Mercury were aspecting the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna, his lifestyle was more or less like a sannyasi. Okay. All right. Srila Prabhupada, founder of ISKCON. Okay, people will have issues with him, right? Even I don't agree with a lot of things that he says, but his chart is interesting. So look at Prabhupada. He had Mercury and Venus in the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna, and this Mercury was exalted. So the sannyas was of a very high level. Okay, and look at the combination. This Mercury and Venus, they are present in the 10th house from Lagna. That means what? That means this fame, as I said, ARUDHA Lagna gives you fame. So this fame, and 10th house is the house of fame. So he became famous because of his renunciation. It was because of his renunciation, right? Because of his renunciation, he actually was able to, he was actually able to start ISKCON, and he became very, very famous as the, as the starter of ISKCON. If someone looks at the chart of now, look now, you can also, you can also see the devotion of a person from the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna. So look at Prabhupada's chart. His, his 6th from ARUDHA Lagna is Virgo. Okay, and because Mercury is exalted, so he was devoted to Krishna. Okay, I don't have the chart of Swami Vivekananda, but even Swami Vivekananda, he he had Mercury and Venus in the 6th house. Okay, he had Mercury and Venus in the 6th house. You just look up the chart of Swami Vivekananda. Okay, the date of birth is January 12th, 1863. The time is 6:33 a.m. Okay, in West Bengal. Just look up the chart of Swami Vivekananda. 12 January 1863, 6:33 a.m. Okay, so he also had Mercury and Venus in the, in the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna, and he was a perfect sannyasi. And because he had sun, an exalted sun, in the, in the 5th house from ARUDHA Lagna, he was very, very popular for his intelligence. He was regarded as a very intelligent sannyasi, right? He was regarded as a very intelligent sannyasi. And who was the, who was the deity, or who was the object of his devotion? As I said, the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna can show you that. So this combination of Mercury and Venus, the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna, for Vivekananda, as far as I remember, it happened in Capricorn. So he was very devoted to Kali, who is the, who is the Devi for Saturn. Okay. Now the question will be, what happens if both malefics and benefics are there in the 6th from ARUDHA Lagna? In that case, the person will be, will be pulled simultaneously between spirituality and other pursuits. Okay. So suppose, suppose you have Mercury and suppose you have Mercury in the 3rd or 6th from ARUDHA Lagna. Then what happens? You can, the trick is that you can get success if you give up the attachment to your karma phala. Okay, whatever action you do, just do it and forget it. That is the easiest remedy that anyone can have. Okay, if Mercury is in the 6th from ARUDHA Lagna, it can make you very, very poor. Let's be very, very clear with that. Okay, it can make you very, very poor. So if Mercury is in the 6th from ARUDHA Lagna, do your work and forget about the results. Mercury will start giving results. Okay, Mercury will start giving results. And suppose Mercury is present in the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna, but is in a Rajasic nakshatra. Rajasic nakshatra means nakshatra, the nakshatras of Mercury, the nakshatras of Venus. Okay, if Mercury is in a Rajasic nakshatra, then the person will not be a sannyasi. But because Mercury is in the 6th house from AL6, right, the person can become very, very poor, can be, can be afflicted by poverty. Okay, the person can be afflicted by poverty. In that case, what happens is, you have to give up the results of your actions. Okay, you have to give up your attachments to karma phala. Okay, 7th house from ARUDHA Lagna. So this is the opposite house to the ARUDHA Lagna. So this is the dwara. This is the, this is the door of the ARUDHA. Okay, so here it is ideal if the 7th house from ARUDHA Lagna is empty, because malefics can block the door of the ARUDHA. Okay, malefics can block the door of the ARUDHA. And because the Karaka of the 7th house is Venus, okay, so it will also show how you relate to the public. Okay, so 7th house, we know it is the 10th from the 10th house, so it affects business relations too. Okay, the 7th house is also the Mahasukha Bhava, because it is the 4th from the 4th house. So it will also have a major influence on the happiness. Right, it will have a major influence on the happiness. So suppose there is a malefic planet in the 7th house from ARUDHA Lagna, then the door to your fame can be locked. The door to your image can be locked. You might do all the things in the world, but your image can be, your image can be, can be prevented from rising. That malefic in the seventh house from ARUDHA Lagna can prevent your image from rising. In that case, the remedy is to worship the Mahavidya associated with that malefic in the seventh house from ARUDHA Lagna. Okay. Jupiter and Moon in the seventh house from ARUDHA Lagna will make the person famous even after they die. This is very, very sure. Okay. This is just like Jupiter and Moon make a person famous, by being in the ARUDHA Lagna itself. Even if they are in the seventh from the ARUDHA Lagna, the person will be famous, when they die. Okay. All right. So just as a quick example from, from the seventh from ARUDHA Lagna. Look at this chart. George W. Bush Jr. He has Rahu opposite to the ARUDHA Lagna. Okay. So because despite becoming the president, there was a lot of focus on his earlier lifestyle. They were very concerned with that he was a drunkard. He was he was a party animal before becoming the president. Okay. Now George Bush Jr. He was a fundamentalist. Okay, he was a fundamentalist. Why? Because look at Ketu. It is there in the ARUDHA Lagna. Now this Lord of the ARUDHA Lagna, 7 from ARUDHA Lagna is placed 9 from the ARUDHA Lagna. Okay. The Lord of AL7 is placed in the 9th house from ARUDHA Lagna. And because it is there in the 9th house, it is in a positive house. So he is still known as one of the, one of the great presidents of the USA. Okay. Sanjay Rath. Okay. Sanjay Rath ji, the famous astrologer. Look at Sanjay Rath. The 7th from ARUDHA Lagna is Gemini. Okay. So this Gemini is the Dwara. Right. So now if the Lord of the AL7 is well placed from the ARUDHA Lagna, it can, it can open the door to success. If the Lord of the AL7 is well placed from the ARUDHA Lagna, it can open the door to success. All right. If it is negatively placed, it will give obstacles for the ARUDHA. So look at the 7th Lord, AL7. The AL7 is placed 9 from the ARUDHA Lagna. So success will be there. Okay. So success will be there. So where did he get his success? He got his success in the USA. Why USA? Because the 7th Lord from AL ARUDHA Lagna is Gemini, and Gemini represents the United States of America. Okay. So this is how you will interpret it. 8th house from the ARUDHA Lagna. So this is again a house of sustenance. We have a lot of negative things to say about the 8th house, but the 8th house is the house of sustenance. The Karaka is Saturn. Okay, the Karaka is Saturn. So planets here will show how healthy a person is perceived. Okay, if you have Sattvic and Rajasic planets in the 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna, people will consider you to be very healthy. If you have Tamasic planets in the 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna, and if you have a bad habit like excessive smoking or excessive drinking or excessive womanizing, your habits will be well known to the public. Okay. Now 8th house is the house of transformation, we know. So any benefic, if any benefic is placed in the 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna, the transformation will happen very, very sweetly, very, very smoothly. If a malefic is present in the 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna, the transformation would be very, very destructive. Okay, it will be very, very destructive. So take this as a rule. Benefics will always give good results in AL2, AL4, AL5, AL7, and AL8. If you have benefics in these houses from ARUDHA Lagna, you will always get excellent results. Okay. However, the only benefic that does not give good results in the 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna is the moon. Okay, the moon will not give good results in the 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna, because moon is the Karaka for ARUDHA Lagna, and being placed in the 8th house, the Karaka of the house being ill placed from the 1st house will not have a good effect for the overall ARUDHA. Now 8th house from the ARUDHA Lagna is also important to understand whether people will give you a loan or not. Okay. If you may be very, very wealthy, okay, you may have a very good business, you may have a very good job, but if there are malefics in the 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna, it will be extremely difficult for you to get a loan. Benefics from the ARUDHA Lagna, benefics in the 8th from ARUDHA Lagna, people would be eager to take a risk with you. Okay, it is very, very important to understand. let's look at the let's look at the example chart. Okay, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So he has Jupiter in the 8th house from the ARUDHA Lagna, right? So obviously we know that he is a fitness freak. People consider him to be a fitness freak because Jupiter is a benefic. It has given him a high level of health perception. Okay, and because Jupiter is there, people did not come. People don't know much about his steroid use. He did not, his drinking and smoking habits were not revealed before the public because Jupiter is saving him. As I said, malefic in the 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna, it can be, it can be very, very, it can be very, very destructive, as your bad habits can be revealed before the public. Benefics from the 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna, your bad habits will be hidden from the public. Okay. So Sandra Ray, we know her as a teaching of as a teacher of rebirth. Her work is particularly known as holotropic breath work. Okay, so look at her. She has Saturn and Jupiter in the 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna, and this is a combination of Brahma Yoga. That means, that means it is a combination for trying to understand the creation. Okay, so her 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna, her A9 and A3, that means the Arudha Pada of the 9th house, the Arudha Pada of the 3rd house, and the Arudha Pada of the 8th and the Arudha and the 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna are all in the same house. Okay, and because her A3 is also falling in the 8th house from ARUDHA Lagna, so she is actually writing books on this topic, because A3, the Arudha Pada of the 3rd house, is represents the topics that you will choose for writing books, because the 3rd house is the house of writing. The Arudha of the 3rd house will show on what topics you will write books on. Okay. 9th house from Arudha Lagna. So this is again a tamasic house. This is considered to be a tamasic house, Harasthana, but the Karaka is Jupiter. Okay. So the destruction and changes that take place in the 9th house from Arudha Lagna, they are usually for your benefit. For example, suppose you are quitting a job to take up a better job. Suppose you are quitting a destructive habit like drinking to become a better person. All of this is seen from the 9th house from Arudha Lagna. Okay. So any planet in the 9th from Arudha Lagna will give support. However, if a malefic is placed like Saturn or Mars or Rahu, it will give support for questionable means. Okay, it will give support for questionable means, but any planets in the 9th house from Arudha Lagna will give you support. Any planet, right? Any planet in the 9th house from Arudha Lagna will give you support. So the Dharma Devata, I had done a chart I had done a session on identifying the Dharma Devata. Okay, right? Just a minute. Yes. So I had done, as I said, I had done a session on identifying the Dharma Devata. Please look up that session. Okay. Just to tell you in brief, the Dharma Devata is the 9th lord from the Karakamsha. What is the Karakamsha? Karakamsha is the placement of the Atma Karaka in the Navamsha. So look up the position of the Atma Karaka in the Navamsha. See the 9th house from that position. That will give you the Dharma Devata. Okay. So this 9 from Arudha Lagna is actually very important to understand the role of the Dharma Devata. Okay, the 9 from Arudha Lagna will show the manifestation of the Dharma Devata in the life of a person. Okay, and the Dasha of the 9th house from Arudha Lagna will be a period of Bhagya. Okay, it will be a period of Bhagya, which will be generally good, unless and until that 9th lord from AL9 is afflicted. Okay, so just let's look at look at a chart here. John F. Kennedy. Okay, so as I said, the Dharma Devata acts for the 9th from Arudha Lagna, right? So John F. Kennedy had Saturn in Cancer in the ARUDHA 9 from ARUDHA Lagna. So this is what his Dharma Devata manifested through. So if you look at the career of John F. Kennedy, he joined politics after being a reporter at the UN conference in 1945. So he was a Democrat, and Saturn is the Karaka for all Democrats. Okay. And as a congressman, he voted for Truman's welfare programs, including expanded social security benefits, right, including age-old benefits. So these are all Saturnian projects because they are primarily concerned at working for the masses, right? And as a president, after being a president, he worked extensively on civil rights registration. He established a Peace Corps. And he also gave us this famous slogan of ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. So the sun or the king, it gives to the country, while Saturn gives to the government, right? So you look at his chart, Saturn is opposing Mars, which is war. Okay, Saturn is opposing Mars. So he was the man behind, forming the Peace Corps. Okay, so it actually showed the establishment of his Dharma Devata through Saturn in Cancer. Okay, so this is what the what the AL9 can do. Mahatma Gandhi, the AL9 is Pisces, right? So Jupiter is the Karakamsha. Okay, so the sign the Dharma Devata manifests through is ruled by the Atma Karaka, which is very, very strong. So Satyagraha, the theory of non-violence, is directly related to Mahatma Gandhi. He was, he was known for not approving the caste restrictions, which is of course related to the open-minded aspect of Pisces. So the Dharma Devata acted through the 9th house from the ARUDHA Lagna. Okay, so look at the 9th house from the Karakamsha. It is Leo, which is lorded by the sun. So he always worshipped, as I said, the worship of the Dharma Devata will always bring you success. So he worshipped the sun form of Vishnu, which is Rama. And Rama was the main mantra of Gandhi. Okay, Rama was the main mantra of Gandhi. He was always chanting Rama, Rama. Okay, so this, this Rama mantra, which Gandhi chanted, it strengthened and supported his abilities to achieve his goals of an independent India. Okay. Tenth house from ARUDHA Lagna. I will not take up this chart. It will not be supportive of the time that we are running out. Okay. 10th house from ARUDHA Lagna. So the 10th house is again a creative house. Okay. It is a creative house. It works to give you what you want and need in the material world. So it is very good to have Sattvic and Rajasic planets in the 10th house from ARUDHA Lagna because it will lift you, especially during the dashas. Malefics here will give you prosperity, of course, but they will ruin your reputation and your health. Okay. So if there are malefics, suppose if there are malefics in the 10th house from ARUDHA Lagna, just so that your reputation is not destroyed, so that your health is not destroyed, the advice on the worship of Durga is advised. Okay, the worship of Durga is advised. This is very, very important. If you have malefics in the 10th house from ARUDHA Lagna, during the dasha of those malefics, you must worship Goddess Durga. And the mantra is Om Hrim Shrim Dum Durgaye Namaha. Okay. Om Hrim Shrim Dum Durgaye Namaha. Okay, let's look at Hitler's chart here again. So Hitler's sun is a Sattvic planet, but because it is in the 10th house from ARUDHA Lagna, it is in a Rajasic place. But since it is an Ashwini Nakshatra, it is giving Sattva to the ARUDHA Lagna. So it is sustaining the ARUDHA. So during the Sun Dasha, it is said that he became more spiritual. Then he entered Moon Dasha because Moon Dasha follows the Sun in the Vimshottari scheme. So Moon being a Sattvic planet in the 6th from ARUDHA Lagna, right? So what happened is, it brought Sattva to the Tamasic place. Okay. So Hitler's moon was in Sagittarius, which is a Sattvic sign. Okay. And Sagittarius is owned by a Sattva Guna Graha like Jupiter. But because it is placed in AL6, okay, because it is placed in AL6, his material worth decreased because all the energies are actually converting darkness to Sattva. Okay, and his moon is in a tamasic nakshatra of Purva Ashadha. Okay, so because the planets in the third house from ARUDHA Lagna and the sixth house from ARUDHA Lagna, they represent your weapons. And because he was running his moon dasha, so he was working as a water carrier in the army. Okay, he was working as a water carrier in the army before he got famous. So this is how you can look at it, right? Look at Mars. Mars is in Rajas Bhava, along with the Mars is in a Rajas Bhava, yes, but it is in Bharani Nakshatra. Okay, but because Mars is in its own sign in a Kendra, so Tamas Guna is increasing. Okay, so Hitler, he used all his energy to plot for his, to plot for his schemes, his politics, right? And his Tamasic Nakshatra, the placement of Mars in this Tamasic Nakshatra, it led him to failure. Okay, if this Mars would have been in a Rajasic planet, he would have actually succeeded. So Tamasic planets, this is a general rule. Tamasic planets in the first and 10th from ARUDHA Lagna can be challenging. Okay, it can be challenging, right? So if you look at Hitler's, if you look at the history of Hitler, okay, Hitler's fighting, it was based on economics. He promised to give a better economic future to the Germans. And his style of attacks were short, which got immediate results, right? So he, this ARUDHA Lagna, Hitler's ARUDHA Lagna is Cancer. So Gemini is in the 12th house, and 12th from the ARUDHA Lagna, as we will come to it, it shows secret enemies. Okay, so because the 12th house from the ARUDHA Lagna is Gemini, so the secret enmity actually came from the USA. Okay. Sanjay Rath, again taking up his chart. So in the chart of Sanjay Rath, Mercury is in the 9th from ARUDHA Lagna. Okay, so Rajasic planet in a Tamasic place. So as I said, 9th house is the destruction for something better. Okay, so it is in the nakshatra of Purva Phalguni. So because it is this Purva Phalguni nakshatra is tamasic, in a tamasic place, it will show success. Okay, so as I said, Mercury is the AL7 lord, so it is a very important planet in opening the Dwara or the doorway of the Arudha, and he got his success in the USA. Okay. All right, then just 2 houses left. Danuji, kudos to your patience for sitting through. Okay, I'll just complete it as soon as possible. 11th house from ARUDHA Lagna, it is again a Sattvic house. It is the house of sustenance. It shows what is being given to you. Okay, it shows what your resources for sustenance are. And planets in this house and aspects of the planets in this house will show where the money is coming from. Okay, this is very important to show how you will or where you will get success in business. Okay, if you are thinking of doing a business and related to a planet, for example, suppose you are thinking of doing a business related to water supply. So water based businesses are basically related to the moon. So if the moon is aspecting the 11th house from the ARUDHA Lagna by Rashi Drishti or Graha Drishti, or if the moon is present in the 11th house from ARUDHA Lagna, you will actually get success from that business. That is how you will look at, you look at your ability to do business. Okay. For example, suppose you want to make money from clothing, from silver, from women's accessories and other things, then you have to see if Venus is aspecting or if Venus is in the AL11. Okay. On the other hand, you may be very good at making jewelry, but if Venus is not associated with the ARUDHA Lagna, 11 from ARUDHA Lagna, it is, that business will not give you money. Okay. So natural benefics will show income from legitimate sources. Malefics will show, illegitimate ways of getting money. Okay. So just as I said, malefics in the 6th house from ARUDHA Lagna will show black money. Similarly, malefic influence in the 11th house from ARUDHA Lagna will also show black money. Okay. If the lord of the AL11, that means if the lord of the 11th house from ARUDHA Lagna is placed badly from the ARUDHA Lagna, it will show financial problems during the Dasha. Okay. 12th house from Arudha Lagna. So this is again a tamasic house with Saturn as the Karaka. So this will show the loss of money as well as the loss of, as well as secret enemies. Okay, so AL2 is your sustenance. It is the Sattva that is sustaining you. AL12 is the Tamas that is destroying you. Okay, so all the planets here will show secret enemies. For example, if the moon is there, it will show problems with motherly figures. If Jupiter is there, it will show problems from learned people or from the guru. If Mars is there, it can show problems from authorities like the police or army. Okay, so just like the planets and aspects on the AL11 showed the gains, similarly planets and aspects to the AL12 will show where the money is being lost on. Okay, for example, if Mars is in the AL12 or Mars is aspecting AL12, it can show that that money is being lost due to legal problems. Similarly, if Sun is aspecting the AL12 or Sun is in the AL12, it can show money is being lost on taxes and so on. Okay, so if you worship the 12th Lord from Arudha Lagna, you will remove all losses and secret enemies. Okay, if you worship the 12th Lord from Arudha Lagna, the Mahavidya associated to the 12th Lord from Arudha Lagna, you will remove all losses and secret enemies. This is very, very important. All your donations must be based on the 12th Lord, on the 12th house from Arudha Lagna. Okay, for example, if your 12th house from Arudha Lagna is lorded by Venus, you must donate to widow welfare, maybe. You must donate to marriages. You must donate to, you must try to get someone married through your donation. Okay, 12th house from Arudha Lagna will also show you the percentage of religiosity in a person. Okay, if a benefic is there in the 12th house from Arudha Lagna, the person can be very, very religious. All right, if a malefic is there in the in the 12th house from Arudha Lagna, the person can be religious, but the person will be religious minded, but he or she might not like to follow all the rules or regulations that a religion asks him or her to follow. Okay, the 12th house from Arudha Lagna will also show something tangible that is being given or lost. Okay, Arudha Lagna, Arudha Padas in the 12th house from Arudha Lagna will show what or who you ignore. For example, suppose the A5, the Arudha Pada of the 5th house is falling in the AL12, it means you'll ignore your children. Suppose the Arudha Pada of the 7th house is falling in the AL12, it shows that you will ignore your partner. And so on. Okay, so if you want to increase your spirituality, you will always fast on the day related to the 12th Lord of the 12th Lord from the Arudha Lagna. It will increase your spirituality. Okay, for example, suppose if your Arudha Lagna is a Scorpio, the 12th house from Arudha Lagna is ruled by Venus. So fasting on Fridays will increase your spirituality. Okay, so that's it. That's it from me. It has been a long session. Okay, any questions, Tanuji? Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, you sat through it. It has been others left because of some professional commitments. I did not expect it to go so long, but anyways, I hope a lot of things have been uncovered. I'll see you soon for another session. Thank you so much. Om Guru Namaha.